Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Authentic and Unapologetic Conversations with Latrice Torres. I am your host, Latrice Torres. I am the CEO of Leader Keys Consulting, and I am so excited for today's show. I say that every show, and it's probably because I make a point. I pick the people I really, really want to talk to, and that I think you guys are really going to want to hear. But I am especially excited for today's show and my guest. Before I jump into anything, this is a part 3 of this particular show, and we've been talking about rest and leadership, rest in careers, rest in life in general, for a few episodes. So if you have not watched part 1 and 2, which were both with Lisa Hurley, part 1 was actually on Lisa Hurley's podcast, Space to Excel. Shout out Lisa Hurley, and I see you in the comments already. And then part 2, I had Lisa on my show. Make sure you look at those. Those are both on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Welcome to everybody who is out there coming from all 3 of those channels. I'm so happy to have you here. Participate in the comments, ask questions, dive in. Can't wait to have this back and forth dialogue with you. When we talk about rest in our careers, sometimes, and there's probably somebody out there who's thinking, how do those two things actually sit in the same space? We're going to really actually talk about that today, but I wanted to start with a quote. The quote today is, "Success is not built on burnout. It's sustained by boundaries, balance, and belief in our worth." I want you to hold on and keep that particular quote in mind as we go through and we talk to our guest today. So our guest is none other than Nashira Spencer. Before I bring her up, I have to give her props. So I'm going to read her bio, and I'm going to make sure that I get it right by reading it word for word, because I don't want you guys to miss anything about who this outstanding woman is. So first, Nashira is an industry recognized transformational leader who helps develop innovative and strategic business driving technology and cybersecurity solutions that produce human-centered and human-powered digital and organizational transformations. Whew, that was already a mouthful. She has done this for several Fortune 500 organizations in the media, financial services, real estate, and retail technology industries. Over the last 20 years, she has held executive level roles in cyber and information security, technology services and operations, and data privacy, delivering high impact revenue growth, expense reduction, and operational efficiencies. Nashira is a true servant leader. She values transparency, authenticity, accountability, and drive. And yeah, I've seen her in action. These are not just words. Like this is, she really, really lives this. It's at the heart of everything she does, because she knows how to leverage empathy and trust to build effective teams that drive and thrive through synergy. She's passionate about building future-focused cultures, and she does. She really does the thing. I know from experience that she's a loyal leader who is laser focused and committed to the growth and development of her teams. But I want you all to hear that from her. So we're going to really dive into her story. But before I get into that, Nashira's time is also frequently served. Time is also frequently spent serving on several not-for-profit boards that are focused on the advancement of underrepresented populations and communities. She's especially passionate about STEM engagement and education in youth, and envisions a future for herself where that passion intersects with her work. She's a DEI advocate, an ally, and is wholeheartedly committed to using her position and platform to serve as a change agent for good. I met Nashira at one of my former roles, and she was the executive sponsor of the ERG that I was in at the time. But besides that, I cannot tell you how many people were like, you have to just know Nashira. The two of you have to know each other. And I everything about her is everything. I tell her all the time, I want to be her when I grow up. Not listed anywhere is her ability to globetrot, and I mean actually really vacation. All of this while raising a teenage son and a toddler. She got a 3-year-old, I don't even know how she's doing that. She's a realist, and you guys are in for a treat. So without further ado, I would like to bring up Nashira Spencer.
Thanks
Welcome.
for having me, Latrice. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. I've been talking about having you on this show for a minute, and I'm glad we're making it happen. I'm glad we're here.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So before we get into this, I asked you this before we got it, but I'm going to ask a little bit of a different question because I asked you where are you going to next? Because again, my favorite thing about you is like, girl, you know how to vacation. But but I'm actually going to ask you, what is your favorite vacation spot? Like, what's the? I'll go there 1,000 times.
My favorite vacation spot that I have gone to and will continue to go to 1,000 times is Costa Rica. La Pura Vida, they are serious about that. And that is all like everything that I'm about. Just the relaxation. The people are so friendly, the biodiversity. I went there about a month or so ago for my birthday. It was my solo trips, just sitting, being in the jungle, rainforest, whatever the heck you want to call it, hearing the monkeys, hearing the birds, reading a book, and chilling.
Mhm.
Amazing. But Costa Rica is like hands down my favorite place in the world to go.
I love that. That's I haven't even been there. That's it's on my bucket list, but I haven't been there. So like now that endorsement tells me that I have to make
You got
that
to
happen.
make that happen. You
I
got to
have
make
to
that
make
happen,
that
sis.
happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So this is for us to just kind of talk and engage. We're gonna stay on topic. The topic is how do you climb this crazy, career ladder, so to speak. I actually hate that term, but how do you manage your career, but also manage rest inside of that. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your career story. I did your bio, but like tell us a little bit about the story and how you were like what's the point where you were like I got to get some rest in here, like this is an important piece of that story.
Okay, so my career story is that I've wanted to be a divorce lawyer my entire life up until 16, 17. My dad is a retired bus driver. And so when his bus schedule kind of coordinated with my school breaks, we would sit and we would watch divorce court all day long. And I was going to go to Harvard. I was going to be a Harvard law student. And
Mhm.
let's fast forward to, was it ninth grade? So I went to boarding school and they had a college fair. And I called my dad back and I was like, oh, I looked at this and I looked at that. And my father was like, listen here, little girl. He still calls me little girl at the age of 46. And he was like, you are really good in math and science. This country produces enough doctors and lawyers. You're going to be an engineer. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's back in the days when I still lived my life to please my parents. And
Mhm.
so I went to undergrad at Penn. I studied comp sci, absolutely positively hated it. And I remember calling my parents one day, it was like junior year, and I was like, yep, sorry, daddy. Like, I'm gonna go switch to like a softer side of engineering, and you'll still have your engineer, but it won't be comp sci. And he was like, and who's supposed to pay for the extra money? And I hadn't quite thought about that.
Right, you're like
So that summer between junior and senior year, I was placed in an information security department, and that is what started my career. Like literally a random placement in an information security department. And I will say that I worked with 5 men that summer, and they all took time to sponsor me, to teach me stuff. Once a week, one of them would pull me into their office, spend an hour to teach me the basics, right? And so that is what kind of randomly started my career in this. I, at one point in time, I was like, I'm gonna go back to school and I'm gonna get my PhD in computer science. And then I
Mhm.
was like, you kind of sick of school. Like after I finished my master's, I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, what do I need a PhD for? Like, I am really, really
Right,
good.
right.
So throughout my career, I had been the first part of my career, I worked at financial services organization, and it was one organization that at the time that I worked there was going through some financial difficulty. And it was
Mhm.
one day I left the office and it was like New York City news cameras all over the place. And I was like, what in the dickens is going on? And that day, the stock price had dropped from like 50 something dollars to $3.
Mhm.
And one of the things, Latrice, I'm like, I need a job. I have bills I need to pay. I cannot sit
Mhm.
here and do this uncertainty. And so the in that time period, I was like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta find a job someplace else. Not that I didn't have a job, but I need to find another job. And the stress of that wreaked havoc on my health. And so I developed something called tinnitus, right? Which is this constant ringing in your ear, and it
Mhm.
never goes away. And so with time, your brain eventually learns how to ignore the noise. But it's
Mm.
just, if it's really super duper quiet, I
It's
will
there.
hear that ringing. It's there. It does not go away. And that was my first sign that stress cannot take over my life. I
Uh-huh.
would say the second one is when I had finally found a new job. I was at a different financial services organization. And it was one day my leadership team was driving me back crap crazy. And I was pregnant with my first child. And I was
Mhm.
like just joking around. I called my GYN and I was like, hey, I'm experiencing my, cramps or something. And he said,
Mhm.
come to the hospital. And I was actually going through preterm labor and didn't
Mm.
know it.
Mm.
That was my second clue. And after that, I was like, you know what? Between this ringing in my ear and
Mhm.
preterm labor, and, not to be personal, but I had had a number of miscarriages
Mhm.
before that pregnancy. And I was like, I cannot lose this child on
Mhm.
account of work related stress. And
Right.
that was then when I was like, you know what? Work will have to go on the back shelf because my
Mhm.
health matters more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if I mean you got to be here in order to do the work. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's got to be prioritized. Yeah, I can completely understand that, and thank you for sharing that. I think we all can sit back if we really think about it, and we all can actually name those moments where we're like, okay, is this is this balancing? Is this a thing? I often talk about when I teach about generations in the workplace. There's actually 5 generations that are actively working in the workplace right now, and they all look at work very differently. Right? You have that silent generation who like they literally lived to work. Like that was like their thing, right? And then you have the next generation, the boomers who kind of are like they lived to or they worked to live, right? It became like women were getting more into really more solid roles and things like that. And then Gen X are the greatest generation. We came in and we actually gave the world work-life balance, right? Because we thought we were being cool of like we got to balance work and we got to balance life. And then the millennials were like, we kind of have to like balance life and then work, right? They taught us some things about that. And now you have this generation that is in here who is like, I want to live my life, and work is going to have to fit its ass in here where it can get in, right? So it's really interesting. But all of those dynamics are all playing with each other in these work
Yep.
spaces. So my next question to you is that like you are at the top of your game. You are the, you have that chief title, right? You run an entire part of an organization. And you're seeing all of those dynamics play out. What assumptions or challenges have you had to face to kind of fight not just for yourself in terms of balance and rest and work, but fight for the people who you lead and they hear that? So what challenge have you come across and how do you address that?
I would say tons of challenges, right? So I remember being at other organizations and really fighting to get more Gen Alpha talent. I think that's what you call them, right?
That sounds
The newbies, something like that, right?
right.
So the Gen A's, right? So I know the oldest of them because I know this from my nephew and my son. He's 28 and my son is 15. So that is that Gen Alpha.
Right.
And fighting to get Gen Alpha talent in the door because, oftentimes employers will want folks with experience. Well, and they got a little bit of experience now, but when I was fighting for this, they didn't have. And to your point, managing boomers, right? And understanding the different dynamics of what they each want to
Mhm.
quote unquote balance life, right? And so one of the things I think that has kept me centered in my fight for myself and my fight for my team related to rest is understanding people's humanity and
Mhm.
also understanding we don't all have the same story, right? So I don't even look at it in terms of generational stuff. It is, what does this person need to exist and to thrive? Because if they're thriving personally, then they're going to thrive professionally, right? So ways that I've encountered this in some organizations, it was fighting for work from home, right? So when I worked at the media organization, I would allow my team 2 days out the week, and this is before COVID, right? 2 days out the week, do what y'all need to do, work from home. I had a leader that came in from FinServ and he didn't agree with it. And him and I would go back and forth. And I'm like, some of these folks lived, so we were in the city close to Princeton. Some of them lived way out in Long Island. Why are we asking them to do this 2-hour commute? When if you think about it, they could stay home. That's 2 extra hours. We sort of kind of get, to do, whatever the company's name is, work. So I would fight with him about it. And so in that circumstance, I said, you know what, I'll give up my work from home Friday. Just let my team be. And so I made the self-sacrifice, which he kind of floated with for a couple of months. So that's one way. I would say the second thing is really get to know and understand your team and understand their lives and let them solution for you what they need. Yes. So instead of me saying, well, this is what I'm going to allow, no, what do y'all need? And help me try to figure it out with management. And then the third thing, and I probably shouldn't even say this, everything doesn't necessarily have to go to management, right? If it's things in my power, right, that I can do and I can provide the necessary cover for you, go forth and do it.
Right.
Good. Does your work get done? That's my main thing.
Right.
Does your work get done? Are you happy? Then we're good.
Yeah. Oh, look, Nashira, that last one, that's a big one, because I think like every leader wants to say that they empower their people to do their jobs. And I think most do, but I think a lot of people really, really struggle with actually trusting that. Like you empower them, but trust them and they'll make those decisions and they'll do that. Like that is a big one that I think a lot of people can learn to do, not even just as leaders, but even as peers and colleagues as well. Like if you say, hey, I'm going to give that to you to do, or, that's your thing and I'm going to be hands off. Well, then do that.
Hands off. Yep. Absolutely.
Actually do that. But I love that, those three things. So I just that to recap, that the first thing that you said really, and it brought up something in me, because also when I'm in that generational conversation, the end of that conversation is, even though there's different approaches to it, there is a common thread that everybody wants to actually come to work and live life and be happy and healthy. That is a common thread. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Like all of that doesn't matter, but that's common no matter what. Nobody is going to disagree and be like, no, I actually want to be miserable and unhealthy. Like I've never heard anybody say that, right? There's somebody out there who do. Okay, that's on you. But I've never heard that, right? So like that's a common thread, and that's a big one to again, just for a leader to keep that in mind, that no one wants to come to work and be unhappy. That's not a choice.
Should you want unhappy people on your team? Misery loves company. Like, please don't spread that craziness. All right. You be happy, right? We all gonna be happy. You miserable, stay home.
Girl, there's, Gallup does this like happiness poll every year. And basically there's like a couple of categories where it's like actively engaged. Like I'm happy to be here. I love my job, right? To engage where, I'm happy to have a job. And I come here and I do it. To neutral, where it's like, you know what, I get paid for a service, I do it and I go home.
And I go home. Yep.
Disengaged, where they're like, it's the people who are like, they don't really love their job, but they do it because they
just kind of do it. Yeah.
They just kind of go through it. And then there's this group called actively disengaged. And anytime I'm telling people about this, I'm like, no, these people, because they tell everybody they're not happy with their job. You can't miss it. You can't miss them. And it's infectious. They talk to other people, and in that energy, it spreads, and it becomes like this whole thing. Right. But again, as a leader, that's what you're managing. You're managing all of those categories coming in at the same time. And then trying to balance, like, what do you give them? Which is your point. So they usually will tell you what they need to be happy.
And you have to ask, right? Because some people, I'm going to slightly disagree, because I have managed folks who have been so afraid, right? Yes. Because culturally they've been taught something a certain way, or because of prior leadership. And I think it goes back to that establishing trust and then asking the questions and having a listening ear for them to tell you what you want, and kind of poking and prodding as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. You got to dig in there and ask the right questions to get it out of them. Because to your point, some people are actually they fear actually saying what they really need to say, or more importantly, they may even deflect or just try. Or my favorite one, which is kind of like that passive aggressiveness that thing. You're like, why don't you say what you want to say? And
okay, because I'm reading everything.
Exactly. And that's the challenge I think we have as humans, right? We have to read everything, not just what people are saying, but the body language, the eye contact or lack thereof. Like it's all of those things that come into play. And that's a lot. And I think this is why we're talking about like our careers and rest so much, because we spend 75% of our time actively in our careers, like our awake hours is there, right?
Yep.
And if that's where we're going to be at, then we've got to figure this out. Otherwise, we were talking before we got on here, and I was talking to Miss Lisa Hurley this morning, and I was telling her, we were like, people.
Listen,
that's the end of the sentence.
The energy and the demons.
Exactly that. So it's like, it's one thing to like balance the work, but you're also constantly balancing the people as well. And those are two dynamics that is just like, they're difficult. So I want to bring up a couple of fast little, because I always got to have some data or some facts or something that goes along with all of these things as well. So I want to bring that up really quickly and talk about a few insights as I was kind of just researching this in terms of just like the level you're at, this C-suite level. So one of the insights that I came across is that only 1.4% of the C-suite executives in the US are Black women. That is a very small slice that you're a part of, right? Black women are more likely to aspire to leadership roles than white women, but less likely to be promoted. And that's a real thing, right? That is a real thing. And lastly, Black women are more likely to report feeling exhausted and burnt out at work. And the end of that statistic says, and not being listened to. Like that was the end of that statistic, where it dives in a little bit more into that. If you ever want to do a little bit more research on that, it's you can go into the Lean In and the McKinsey report. They've been doing it since I believe 2018 was the first one that they've been doing, all the way up into 2023 or 2024. I think of the 2024 one just came out. But this adage here that many Black women report working twice as hard for half the recognition. And I don't even think that that's just an adage. I mean, for me, I was literally grown up and was told that, like, you got to work twice as hard for half the recognition. And it was just something that was a constant thing that we have. So if you're telling me I got to work twice as hard, then there's something hard. It's hard to stand that up against now what we're talking about today, but rest too. Like, how do you put those two things together? If you have this, disproportionate amount of emotional labor that is also going into the work itself, the twice the work, right? So then rest becomes both a privilege and a radical act of survival. That is a deep thought to think about.
Very much so.
Yeah, it definitely is. So when I think about that, my next question for you is then, what does rest actually look like? How do you define that for you, both practically and emotionally? And then how do you actually fit that in professionally?
Rest for me, I am a natural introvert, right? I'm not shy, but I need time to myself, right, to recharge. So how do I build in rest, right? So like you said, I have a 15-year-old and a 2-year-old. So she's not even 3. She's not even 2 yet. She's 2 in August.
Okay.
And I depend heavily on my support system to get rest. Now, thankfully, like the 15-year-old, he's in boarding school. So he's not, unless it's like right now, summertime or vacations, he's not in my here day to day.
Okay.
But when he is home, he is the biggest pain in the neck, the biggest emptier of my bank account, thinks I'm Uber. And so I depend heavily on my support team, be it my parents, be it people at church, be it the babysitter, whoever the heck it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I need a break, right? So that's A. B, I start my mornings early, right? So I am normally up at 5 o'clock. The little one tends to wake up naturally 6:45 to 7. So I can get 2 hours of just time to hear myself think,
Yeah.
right? That is rest for me. Third thing, like you said, I vacation like crazy. I have, even before I got to this quote unquote executive level, even before companies started doing shenanigans like unlimited vacations, because you're you're a former HR leader, so you really know what that's about. And I have always been clear, I need 6 weeks of vacation a year. Like, I've had leadership look at me like I was crazy, and I'm like, whatever. I need my time to be away. And so those are the primary things. And then I do my best to journal. I'm not going to say I journal all the time, right? Just to get the crazy thoughts out of my head.
Right.
And prayer is a very big thing for me too, as well, to have communion and conversation with my God when I'm feeling overwhelmed, to be like, God, like, I'm Christian. So there's a Bible verse that says, where Jesus says his burden is easy and his yoke is light. So that is my prayer. Okay, God, you take mine, I'm gonna take yours. You told me your burden was easy and your yoke was light. Okay, I'm gonna take yours. You take this crap away from me.
Right.
And so those are kind of like my things. Now, you asked about how I do this professionally. I am very upfront with leadership, especially when I start a new job. I sit and I listen and I understand what the problems are that I'm inheriting.
Right.
I create a solution for it. And then I tell my leadership team, here are the things that I believe I can get done with the resources that you've given me. And here are what I cannot do.
Yeah.
And I've told just about every leader I've ever worked for, understand that I am not Jesus. I cannot turn this water into wine. I cannot walk on water. So I'm very clear about, here's what I can do. Here's what I cannot do.
Yeah.
Do you hear this and do you accept this, right? Because I find oftentimes, and I was just speaking to the ERG at my current job about this last week or 2 weeks ago, where we, not just Black women, but us in general, Black and brown people, feel we come to these jobs, we're supposed to be so grateful that we have these titles, and we sit and we attempt to do miracles, and we take on way more than what we should. We always find a way to make it work, but at what cost?
Right.
And I stopped doing that a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I love, because that's such in contradiction of just what I was talking about before, of the whole that you got to work twice as hard for half the recognition, right? But that's in our heads. We're hearing that. And what I love about what you're saying is that two things can exist at the same time, in terms of, yes, you do got to work twice as hard, but you got to be realistic on what that actual work is, and saying up front, here's what I know I can do. Like, I think we all need to practice that for sure, because we do over promise and under deliver, because again, we're in that twice as hard, half of recognition mode. And that, I think, it's time for us to let that go. We've got to let that go. Yeah. And that's a great way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I'm always centered in what matters most to me, right? So I joke all the time, when it's my time to transition and whoever's responsible for writing my obituary, we get 3 paragraphs, right? Unless your family is extra and you're doing pages upon pages, right? But typically you get 3 paragraphs. Don't waste a single line or sentence about anything I've done professionally, right? For me, what matters most is who I am as a mom, as a family member, as a community leader. Those are the things I want you to talk about. So if I can say that in my final days, this is the final day, this is what I want you to remember, then when I'm at work, I'm not saying my job doesn't matter. It does matter. But in the grand totality of who I am, is
Right.
such a small percentage. So
It's
why am I going to sit and
Mhm.
stress myself out about
Mhm.
something that I don't even want to be mentioned when I'm gone?
Right. I, man, that is a whole word. That is a whole word. And again, I think most people hear that. I hope a lot of people receive that, because I quite often tell the story when I'm working with a client and they really are in that, that like they're giving every single thing to that job and or the people at that job. Like every part of it is draining them to death. And I actually tell the story of a coworker once who literally died at their desk. And like literally, and it was I'm not the only person with this story. My mom often tells a story about someone she worked that died at the desk, and nobody even actually knew that the person
Jesus.
had passed until like the end of the day. They thought they were taking a nap or something like that. Like it was like that's how. But like those type of experiences really wake you up. You're like, what? Right? The worst part of that, because I even had my cousin who called me. She was like, "Girl, one of my employees passed away. I didn't even know what to do, and I didn't check on them until day 3, and then I was told, and should I checked on day 1?" And like she was like totally freaking out about it. But the worst part about it is, in all 3 of those cases, within the next week, they had that person's jobs posted.
Listen, the healthcare CEO that was all in the news a few months ago, right? Even despite that person being murdered, they
Right?
still had those meetings that day.
They did. They did. That's wild. Wild. So yeah, I encourage people like listening to this, if like absorb that and then put that into the grand scheme of the way you are prioritizing your job and your work. Because at the end of the day, it means so little. Like you said, I know my obituary is not going to say nothing about any job, any job. I'll not my obituary. Now I may have some instructions of like, you can go slap these 5 people for me. Because I'm petty. But there will be nothing in my obituary about any kind of job or anything that I had, not even leader keys. Like my own company is probably not going to be in my obituary, because those aren't the things that matter. They just aren't. They aren't. And I haven't read, I haven't read hardly any obituaries that has anybody's jobs and professional. I've rarely seen that. So focus on what matters. I do want to go back a little bit because,
Yes,
again, a 15-year-old, I did try to age your daughter up, but I thought her and I thought her and my grandbaby were a little bit closer, but they're not. They're not.
no.
We were just both in that mode of baby mode, but I can't tell how much time has and has not passed. Clearly. So I clearly was trying to age her up. But yeah, an almost 2-year-old who's the cutest thing ever, by the way. She's already mini mommy. But and then the son who can I
Is
say? Can
giving
I say
me
his
a
name? Are you
run for
okay
my
with me?
money.
Are you okay with me saying his name?
You see, fine. You go for it.
Look, every picture he has resting Bryce face is what I call it. It is. But I'm 15. I tell everybody, like, I raised 3 sons, so I know this really, really well. And boys between the age of 13 and 19 are just like, they're so challenging. The only good news I can tell you is that they come out of it, like they come back and then they're amazing after that. But that period, this high school, oh girl, I don't even know how. Like I understand you were like, oh, he going to boarding school. I was like, bravo. Any other way to balance a 15-year-old and an almost 2-year-old? I don't know if there is. So talking about like that team, like that team of people, your tribe, that family that is, that's coming in and helping and making sure that you are okay. Like that's a big part of how you balance these things.
I couldn't do it without them. Like shout outs, biggest shout outs ever to Walter and Daisy Washington, because if it were not for them, my
Mhm.
professional career would not be possible, right?
Yeah.
When I need to travel, I call up. My father does not believe in driving and I'm sorry, flying. At the age of 87, this man will drive from Georgia to New York to transport my mother so she can be here and watch the baby, right? Thank you, Father God. Either that or based on the time of the school year, I will fly her down there to Georgia. I couldn't do half of what I attempt to do without the two of them in their support.
Right.
And then, like I said, her godmother is amazing. She just moved to Atlanta, so that's one less resource. But she always told me she got me. My sister. I have a connection of folks at church, right? Like I am blessed that I have the support system that I have. Because if not for them, I don't know if I would not. I can't even say I don't know. I would not be able to operate at the level and at the efficiency that I operate.
That you do. Yeah, yeah. And you can always drop her off at Auntie Tracy's house too.
I sure
Like
will.
I'm already set. I got kitchen set up and
We got
slides.
June baby stuff right waiting for
June
her.
baby, yeah. It's just like she ain't here. She in Japan, so she can just come over and just take the reign of the place. The other thing that you talked about, and I wanted to touch on really quickly, is you said I wake up early. And I think like say a little bit more about that because I have some other thoughts, but I just want you to say a little bit more.
Okay. So where that came from is when I worked in financial services. And this is when I worked in the city. And I had to be up early because I had to be on a 6 something bus because FinServ, you got to be there at the crack of dawn because you got to
Yeah,
support Europe and Asia and blah, 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 blah.
right.
And so I was on a bus by like 6:05, and because I had to be at work before 7:30. And so it's just a natural part of I just wake up early. Now, some days, because I work remotely, some days it is insomnia while I'm up, but I do attempt to get up early to be purposeful about my mental, my spiritual, and my physical health, right? So when I had a trainer, I would meet him at the gym at 5 in the morning, right? Because when else am I going to have time to work out? There's like a little mini gym in the house right now. So when I am sufficiently rested, then I'll go and I'll work out. But if not, I'll find some time in my day to try to work at least 3 to 4 times a week. But that time, I need the house to be quiet. I need to feel
Mhm.
like it's just me and God alone, right? I don't even hear the birds chirping. Well, it's summertime, so they start chirping now. But in the wintertime, I don't hear them chirping. I feel like it's just me and God sitting and it's alone, and it's the best thing in the world. It's
Yeah.
just quiet and it's silent and it's peaceful.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you need that because the moment that that's not a thing, it's not a thing anymore. Like all the noise, just it all comes down and it's everything. It's every direction. So yeah, I get that. And there's a lot of research about like just early risers, like, besides, the early riser gets the worm, right? But that's true. It really is. And you can be so productive. I often struggle in terms of managing like just energy management. I'm like you. I am an extreme introvert, and when I say I have to reset and I have to disconnect, like I mean full stop. Like it has to be to the point, and it's not. But I wish I could do it in a few hours, but it usually ends up being a few days. But in those few days, that I've noticed that I will actually wake up earlier and earlier in that process. And I'm noticing it because I'm managing how much quiet time that I need in order to truly do that reset. So I love that. And I think that's a key strategy for anybody who is listening to this. If that's not a part of your routine, that may be a big reason why you may be in that burnout mode, and maybe try, incrementally and 30 minutes earlier, an hour earlier and everything, but just starting your day a little bit earlier.
Or even if you don't start your day earlier, carve out at least 1 hour of time for yourself a day. If it's your lunch hour, go out. I mean, for folks who are in office, go take a walk, go
Right.
book a conference room for that hour to just
Yes.
reset and be by your dang on self.
Yeah. Put you on your calendar. I say that all the time.
Absolutely.
Right. Like we put everything makes your calendar except for yourself. So
Exactly.
like put
Absolutely.
you on your calendar. This was a big discussion that I had to have with my husband at some point because he's one of those types that just runs on all cylinders as well. And he's also an introvert. And I know him. And I'm like, you can't just keep running like that. You're going to burn out. And I always know when he burned out because I can literally hear it. And I'm like, ooh, somebody getting it right now. Because I can tell, but it's always with that point where he's been doing too much and he didn't. And I'm like, look, you have to put you on your calendar. You're going to have to learn how to do that. And he's much better at that now. But that time management, it's more like energy management.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it definitely is. So you had your support team, getting up early, vacationing often. Can't stress that. So
I live to vacation.
look, how does that conversation sound? Because a lot of people are like, that one's going to be one that's challenging for everybody. How do you walk up in there and be like, look, I need 6 weeks of vacation? Like, tell me more. Like, what does that sound like?
I don't necessarily say I need 6 weeks of
I
vacation.
know
Like
that.
I'm smart
But
with it, but
yes.
I have always been the person to I just put vacation on my calendar. I don't ask. I'm not asking you for vacation. I'm an adult, right? Like
I'm telling you when I'm off.
I'm telling you, I will be off. And I tend to have vacations. I take the same vacation times every year. So I will do a spring break trip with Bryce and my mom and the baby now.
Mm-hmm.
I will do a time for my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I will do a Thanksgiving trip. That's normally like my second family trip. So when I was married, it would be me, the hubby, the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christmas, I'm usually in Georgia. And then I have mental health days sprinkled throughout because
Mm-hmm.
there are some mornings when I wake up and I'm like, I just can't do this crap today. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel bad about it. I
Right.
can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
It's my mental health.
I hear you. I remember when I did work in corporate, um, I I knew the days that I knew it wasn't going to work well for me because I overslept. And that was always an indicator to me. It was like if I overslept or if I hit that snooze and I don't get up and I hit it twice the second time, I'm just like won't be in today
Won't be in.
because I'm not gonna be fit for anything anyway. Like you get so
Exactly.
yeah, no, you have to make sure that you can show up because otherwise some alternative version of you is gonna show up. And
Listen, I joke with my team. When I show up, I'm New Jersey, Nashira. You don't want to meet Brooklyn, girl.
right, right. Exactly. Yeah, them alter egos are a real thing.
I know
They
my
are a real thing.
personas.
Yes, and they at least mine sit on my shoulder, and then we look like Latrice is here, and then Tracy be like, so like you got to listen to whichever one is louder, and listen the first time. Listen the first time, right? And then the last, well, actually, there was two more things. You also
Okay.
in journaling. And
Yes.
I do want to talk about that as well and help people expand their thought about journaling because I was just with a client yesterday and she was like, who journals every day? Like, are you human if you actually like who actually does that? And I told her, I said, I do know people who legitimately journal every day and it works for them. But if that's not a thing for you, then figure out a thing that is for you. So what's journaling like for you?
The journaling is getting the crazy out of my head,
Yeah.
right? So if there are racing thoughts, then I need
Mm-hmm.
to just empty stuff out. But journaling for me is my time to reconnect with myself, my
Mm,
time to be vulnerable with myself,
right.
um, my time to write down experiences. And then now that I have a girl child, it's like, what are some lessons I want her to learn from these
Mm,
experiences? And it's not that, Bryce can't learn from these things, but I am so cognizant of femininity and womanhood and feminine energy, right? And I just want to protect that space for her and have some guidance for her. And I don't know. I think also probably because of the age difference too, right? Like I was 31 when I had Bryce. I was 44 when I had Z. So I'm like, am I going to be around for when she has her first child or this, that, and a third? And so there are certain things I just want to document for her so that my voice will always be here, even if I'm not physically present.
Yeah, yeah. You will more than be around. You know how, you know how we live.
You got that right. You got that right, sis.
I have to say that, which leads me to the last one, which was prayer and like that relationship and setting that next to this concept of, again, of rest, right? Of him bearing the things that he needs to bear in order for you to be able to take on what you take on. Like that is so powerful.
Let's just go to Genesis, right?
Right.
And he created the heavens and the earth. And what did he do on the seventh day?
Yeah, he rested.
He
Exactly.
rested.
Exactly. That's
Right?
it.
Like so.
God rested. What are you guys doing? God rested. What's the matter with you? So,
Bingo.
right.
Bingo.
Right,
Bingo.
exactly. Yeah, exactly that. I love that. Those are all such really good, actionable strategies for people to actually hold on to. I'm going to open up the floor to questions from the people here. So if you have a question, pop it into the chat, send it. I actually am signed on in all different places. Sometimes I get the questions that are here on the chat. Sometimes I look at another. So I'm actually going to go and make sure that I'm not missing any questions anywhere else. Well, this question actually you may have covered this. This one is what was the moment that forced you to shift from hustle to healing? That's a good way of putting that.
I would say the big one was when I was going in preterm labor. Right.
Yeah.
Can't do it no more. Just couldn't, right? After I think before I had Bryce, I conceived Bryce, I have 4 miscarriages. I was like, this baby, like, you have no idea how much I prayed over that child. And I was like, to lose him now because of work-related stress,
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah, definitely not worth it. Not worth it. And and it's interesting. I'm hoping someone who is hearing this today and this is their moment for them, rather than it being something as traumatic
Drastic.
as that and stress. I quite often I probably should reach out to Dr. Kelly McGonigal because I think I promote her book more than any book that anyone else. But she has a book called How to Make Stress Your Friend. And actually, that's actually not what the name. I have to go over there in the That's actually not the name of the actual book. I'm probably misquoting it, but that is the name of the YouTube video. So if you have time, it's 15 minutes. And it's just type in How to Make Stress Your Friend by Kelly McGonigal. I think to this day, it is still the #1 YouTube video that is out there, the most video. And essentially, she breaks down in this video like them doing research, like studying, does stress really kill? Like, does it kill? And what they found is that like we all are going through stress. We all have stressors and things like that. It's not necessarily the stress, but it's how we actually process and respond to it. And she really breaks that down. It's really good. It keeps you hooked from all 15 minutes of listening to the talk. But one year at an HR conference, she was the speaker. And I was determined. I was like, oh, I have got to talk to her because I am constantly talking her up. Like she done made it into multiple of my sessions because the book is just really good. Like when you really dive into it and dive into the science of how our brains process and information, our brains is one of the most powerful processors on earth. We talk about artificial intelligence and most people really hang their hat on the intelligence piece, but we really need to remember it's artificial.
Exactly.
Right? And our brains are not. And the thing about them is that they're a living organism where the neuroplasticity is constantly making connections. It's constant, yes, and it's constantly, it breaks and it repairs and it shifts and everything. It is constantly, it does all the things, it has all the behaviors and traits that we want to see in people to really be truly effective. But we only can process a small slither, like consciously, of what our brains are actually doing. So, like, if we can just tap into a little bit more of that purposefully, then we get to start to control things like our stressors and the things that make us happy, right? And I said define rest for you, you know, I think of rum and bacon for me, right? Like rum and bacon. If one of those two things are around, I know I'm going to rest in some way, some shape or form. But the bigger picture of that is there's a disconnect from these other stressors that are happening, right? And that's the thing. So like my point is that moment, if the more we can make that moment not be a traumatic moment, the better. Like the better that would be.
Yeah, I would also say whatever the event is, put it in the framework of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Will whatever this is right now matter to me tomorrow, in a week, in a
Mm-hmm.
month, in a year? It
Mm-hmm.
may matter tomorrow, but will it matter in a week, in a month, or in a year?
In a year. Yes. Or is it just this moment?
Or is
Mm-hmm.
it just this moment? And then breathe through it.
Mm.
That's one of the things when I went to Costa Rica last year, and here I go with me and my Costa Rica stuff. I did this workshop on breath work, and
Mm.
it was so powerful in that different types of breathing rhythms to get you through stressful moments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Which
Breathe through it.
look, and it's such a beautiful segue. For the last like month and a half, almost 2 months, I have been very buried in the world of Lisa Hurley and her Space to Excel book. But when I say it should be like mandatory reading for all Black women, for all women, and I'm going to just say all people. Let me just say that. But what's so powerful in that book is the amount of breath work that she has inside of
Mm.
it. Every chapter ends in breath work. And even though all of the stuff that gets you to that point is amazing, that piece you're like, okay, and I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna do this. The power of breath work is something that just cannot, I don't think, can be replaced. We us remembering to breathe. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right. So um this has been beautiful. I want to leave everybody with a couple of different tips that I feel, and of course, I had to kind of pull these out before I pulled these out before we even had this talk, based on just the way you and I interact and knowing what this conversation was going to sound like. So I came up with 3 takeaways from you, and then some actions. So the 3 takeaways is that prioritizing rest is professional. So like it's part of being professional. Your worth isn't measured by exhaustion, and resting doesn't mean slowing down. It means showing up well. And that's you hit that early in this conversation. Like if we're not well, then we're not gonna we can't show up. We can't show up. So a couple of things I love to help everybody leave with some actionable things that they can do. So one, do an audit of your week for next week. Where are your rest breaks? Don't have any? Well, put yourself on a calendar, put some on there, right? So that's one thing you can do. Find a rest accountability partner. I'm a big proponent of accountability partners, right? And I'm gonna pause on that one for just a second. Who's your rest accountability partner? Who's the person who's just like, you got somebody who's like, hey, you know what? You
A
need
break, that would be my sorority sister, my daughter's godmother, because she will literally, like, when like I said, she just moved to Atlanta, but she used to live 15 minutes away, and she would pick up the phone and she would call and she'd be like, you sound a little stressed out. I'd be like, nah, girl, I'm good, I'm good. And then 15 minutes later, my doorbell is ringing.
yeah. See, and that's, you need somebody like that. So yeah, if you don't consciously have somebody like that for anybody who is watching that. One, start off by being that for somebody. That's a good place to start. So you either find a rest accountability partner or be that for somebody. In the workplace, you can advocate for workplace wellness that actually serve Black women. And that's, I want us to sit and think about that, because I think we rest differently, right? We rest sometimes by just being with each other, just being in community, and thinking about what those things, book clubs, and I love movie clubs as well, and television clubs as well. I just be making those up, but you know what I mean by that, right? To kind of like have that and put that on the calendar as well, right? And then follow Nashira. I tell people that all the time. Follow her on LinkedIn. Watch some of our previous conversations about rest and leadership. This is part 3. There's actually 2 more for you to go and watch. And there's tips in every single one of them. So I wanted to make sure that at the end of this, Nashira, I thank you for your time, for your energy, for just everything that you put into the universe. I am a not just a fan. Wait, what's the right word? A stan for the way you conduct yourself as a human, right? I respect you as a professional because you're shit, but also just as a human being. And that, I think, is what makes you such a great leader. And that's not even just my own witness. That is me witnessing other people witnesses and seeing what that looks like on others. So thank you for what you
thank you so much.
World.
I'm so humbled. Thank you so much, Latrice.
And thank you for being here. This has been a fantastic conversation. I probably will have you back. There's probably,
I'm here. I'll
think of a reason to have you back, but as long as you're up for it, then people will probably see you again. You see, Bonnie Sue is out here in this. The 3 of us need to get together, but we need to get together. So Bonnie Sue, get that on the calendar, reach out to us. But yeah, thank everybody for being here, for spending your time with us today. If you have questions or any other comments or thoughts you want to share, be sure to put those into the comments. You can comment even after this session is over with as well. I promised everybody that there would be a free resource. I'm going to pop that into all of the channels. But after this, I actually have a journal. It's a 21-day journal for folks that has these prompting, insightful questions. And I'm giving that resource away absolutely free. So make sure you do that. And lastly, if you're still here, I want you to comment. Hold on. What is the comment? The comment is, there it is. #lead-in-rest. If you #lead-in-rest, I will put you into a giveaway for a 60-minute coaching session with me that focuses just on incorporating rest into your career. So make sure you put that into the comments, #lead-and-rest. And then we will go from there, and I will pick somebody in the next couple of days. With that, again, Nashira, thank you so much for being here. Everyone else, have a wonderful day. Nashira, stick around for a couple of minutes after this just so that we can debrief. And everyone, thank you for having this authentic and unapologetic conversation with us today. Bye for now.